Like many of you, I was glued to my television screen Wednesday morning, watching the entire trajectory of our nation's future pivot as our new president and vice president were sworn in. Over a number of hours, I saw our country's leaders arrive wearing festive and symbolic garments, walking to the rhythm of the same melodies that have provided the soundtrack to all the important moments in our history. We heard the national anthem, patriotic songs, words of prayer and comfort and unity. We saw our esteemed judges participate in one of their most sacred duties, to administer oaths of office. With the entire world watching, first Kamala Harris, then Joe Biden, put one hand on their holy text and one hand up toward heaven, pledging before God and all of humanity to shoulder this burden, to protect and defend the Constitution, to lift up and serve all Americans to the best of their ability. And as the ceremony came to a close, I was astonished at the sheer amount of emotion that I was feeling. My face was wet with tears, my ears buzzed, and my heart danced. And I realized that was the best service I had ever been to in my life. After all, what is prayer? An opportunity to revisit old words and traditional melodies that have been the same for generations, to walk into the same sacred spaces, to don our holy garments, to step forward eastward toward God's presence, to take our ancient text out of its ark and read it, basking in the glory of its words, the same words that also fell on the ears of our ancestors. These words and rituals that we carry with us, that we hope will illuminate a path toward piety and wholeness, sustain our practice. Because of just that, we have sustained them. On Wednesday morning, our leaders and representatives donned their holy garments. Did you see those radiant women in colors of the rainbow, the same garnet and sky blue and royal purple, and as the threads in the tabernacle? They entered a holy space, the seat of our democracy, that faced seditious attack just weeks ago, but was cleaned and rededicated. When Lady Gaga performed the national anthem, it sounded brand new because she played with rhythm and time to heighten our attention and drama. She rejoiced with her whole body that the flag was still there. She challenged us to come up with our own answers to the questions put forth first by Francis Scott Key, but still relevant each and every day as we form and hone the land of the free and the home of the brave. We heard the Pledge of Allegiance and saw it too in American Sign Language. We heard Jennifer Lopez, representing her American and Puerto Rican family, sing "This land was made for you and me," joyfully interjecting the Pledge of Allegiance in Spanish. We saw the first Latina judge to sit on the Supreme Court bestow the title of vice president upon the first woman to hold the office. And from all of this, we learned that each time we gather for prayer, we have an opportunity to breathe our own values, our own symbols, our own consciences into our sacred liturgy and rituals. The overarching vision, the undergirding message of Wednesday's ceremony was unity, a vision of justice for all, which is impossible without intentional visibility and representation. And it's for the same reason why at Sheriff, we made the decision to include the Imahot, the matriarchs, each time we approach God in personal prayer. You might have heard this before, but when I considered the notion of putting the matriarchs right next to the patriarchs in our Amidah, at first I was against it. The whole point of invoking the names of our patriarchs, I argued, is because God sought out intimate and profound relationships with them. God saw them through pivotal moments in their lives, giving them faith and the promise of a soaring future. And what about the matriarchs? Sarah had to eavesdrop at the entrance to her tent in order to find out her destiny. Rivka endured the agony of warring nations within her. Leah and Rachel competed with one another to earn their husband's love instead of seeking consolation in their sisterhood. How did God reach out to them? How did God lift them up? To me, it seemed antithetical to idealize God's relationship with the matriarchs as a portal to inspired prayer. But as I learned, That's not the point. Prayer can not only be about the historical reality that formed it, it must also light the way toward our aspirational future by insisting that both patriarchs and matriarchs open our channel to the Almighty. We insist on a present and a future in which we believe that God sees all of us, no matter our gender. An ancient text in this way provides the canvas for our own brushstrokes that we add in every generation to paint a more perfect union, a more perfect vision of our potential and of our destiny. Our parsha that we read today, Bo, teaches us about the darkest part of our Exodus narrative. God continues to harden Pharaoh's heart so that Moshe must bring forth God's most terrible signs and wonders, a plague of locusts so thick that it blocks out the sun and destroys Egypt's crops, a darkness so heavy it can be touched, and finally, in the darkest part of the night, a loss so great that a loud cry could be heard in all the land of Egypt. Such has never been or will ever be again. Cradling the body of his firstborn, a mere shadow of the great Egyptian deity that he wanted to be, Pharaoh finally tells Moshe to take his people and depart. And our ancestors, dancing and jubilant, left the place of their oppression and walked toward freedom, but not before engaging in the very first Passover ritual, sharing the Pesach sacrifice with their family, wearing special garments, preparing to teach their children. Because even in the moment of our liberation, we needed the power of ritual to fully understand its gravity. And each year, as we tell the story again and anew, we rely on the same ritual to explore the same themes of oppression and darkness, liberation and light. The Haggadah teaches, B'chol dor vador chayav adam lir'od et atzmo, ki'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim. In every generation, each and every one of us is obligated to see ourselves as if we personally came out of Egypt. This means that our seders should feel as weighty, as emotional, as significant as the very first Pesach, and even as weighty as the inauguration on Wednesday. We must put forth our best creativity and artistry to create an experience that reminds us of the bitterness of slavery, of the relief and release of freedom, and the obligation to use our agency to ensure that no people is ever again enslaved. Though the words are ancient, we read them with new inflection. We sing them with new rhythm. We notice where we have made progress. We notice which questions remain. We prepare answers for all the 4 children to let them know how this is personal. We tell our own stories in the framework of Deuteronomy 26 as we bring the first fruits of our promised land before the priest and start right at the beginning. My ancestor was a wandering Aramean. We fell under the oppression of slavery in Egypt, but with signs and wonders, you, God, liberated us and led us across the wilderness to the promised land. But then our people were exiled, flung to all corners of the earth, where sometimes we flourished and other times we hid from those who demonized and persecuted us. My grandparents fled from Eastern Europe in search of freedom. They arrived safely on our shores, found love, built families, and it is because of your grace and protection, God, that I stand before you here today, dipping parsley and eating matzah and singing Dayenu with my partner and our daughters, whose eyes shine with the light of Torah. I'll end today by quoting the new voice of our generation, Amanda Gorman, who stood before the Capitol and shared her story of vision, of struggle, and of liberation, her new version of Deuteronomy 26, if you will, challenging all who listen to articulate their own stories. Wherever we go, we carry with us both the burden of history and the light of tomorrow. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny Black girl, descended from slaves and raised by a single mother, can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge a union with purpose. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover. In every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country, our people diverse and beautiful will emerge. Battered and beautiful, when day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. Shabbat Shalom. We'll conclude our service with the Musaf. We'll turn now to page